In the light of the Independent Commission's findings and your own research, what would you say is the future of police and crime commissioners in the UK?
Well, the Commission looked at this whole issue very carefully, and we came to the conclusion that the democratic principle that underpins police and crime commissioners is an important principle and should actually be represented in the future. But we also recognise that the police and crime commissioners were beset by a number of problems. As you know, there was an election in November 2012 with a very low turnout. A lot of people didn't know who they were. They haven't really captured the public imagination. Public don't really know about them. And also, there were some other problems in terms of their composition. They're not a particularly representative group of the populations that they serve. Of the 41 police and crime commissioners, only 6 were women, for example, and there were no people from ethnic minorities represented. So what we actually have is a group of white middle-class males, some of them ex-police officers, with this enormous amount of power. There were some other problems as well in terms of the appointment of staff around police and crime commissioners. It was mired in controversy. We know, for example, that 16 of these police and crime commissioners appointed former colleagues, their friends, others to positions of deputy police and crime commissioner, and that the accusation there is of cronyism. We also have heard of controversial sackings. For example, the sacking of the Chief Constable in Lincolnshire was actually declared unlawful. There was also the dismissal of the Chief Constable in Gwent, which also triggered an inquiry of the Home Affairs Select Committee. I think one of the problems with police and crime commissioners is that the scope of what they've got to do and the size of the area that they've got to cover is wholly unrealistic, because how can a single person represent and engage with diverse communities in areas, some areas which have a population of over 2 million people? What we came up with was the conclusion that these problems were not teething problems. They were not implementation issues. They were actually design flaws. And Stephen's Commission's conclusion on police and crime commissioners was that the initiative was systemically flawed as a method of what we call democratic governance and should be discontinued from 2016 onwards. But in making recommendations, we're not suggesting that there's any advantage in going back to the previous system of police authorities, which to many members of the public were also invisible. And what we have suggested instead is that we need to devolve a lot of these powers to much smaller areas, to local authorities, and to give the responsibility for policing in terms of setting budgets and the overall direction of policing to elected councillors, and to have a policing board that would actually have on it the chief executives of each of the local authorities. And if we were to do this, it would overcome a lot of the problems inherent in having a single person with so much power and such a large constituency to engage with.
The University of Huddersfield, inspiring tomorrow's professionals.